Okay, folks, we are going to solve another problem or two. On the latest chapter, which is on try-catch, right? Exceptions. We know exceptions ultimately crash our programs, and so we're learning more about exceptions the more problems we solve. This one says create a program named student demo that attempts to create several valid and invalid report cards. Immediately after each instantiation, handle any thrown exceptions by displaying an error message. Create a report card class with 4 fields, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The report card constructor requires values for the name, 2 numeric grades, and determines the letter grade. Upon construction, throw an argument exception if the midterm or final is less than 0 or 100. The letter grade is based on the arithmetic average, 90 to 100, 80 for B, 70 for C. Not a ranking grading scale, but a grading scale nonetheless. Okay, so I would start by creating this report card class that it talks about. I think this one's going to be pretty straightforward. Letter grade, name, 2 numbers. Let's start with the class. Add a class. Student name. So these are auto-implemented properties that I'm going to use. Midterm and final. Let's just go with whole numbers, right? We're just going to do like an 80% or an 81%, you know. And the last one is letter grade. And of course you could store that in a char. Here's our constructor. It takes in the 4. And wow, that's pretty savvy. Visual Studio takes in 4 inputs and assigns it to the set blocks of our auto-implemented properties. And let me just glance at that a little more. That looks good. The report card constructors throws an argument exception. I think we discussed argument exception, just saying, hey, any method that accepts inputs, if you get a bad input, if you get a bad value for one of those inputs, you could throw the generic argument exception. So if the midterm or final is less than 0 or more than 100, so we would say, before we do the assignments, if midterm grade less than 0 or midterm grade greater than 100, or final grade less than 0 or final grade greater than 100. Throw a new argument exception. So again, exceptions can occur naturally, right? You don't have to throw an exception to cause it to happen. Or you can manually throw an exception. You can cause an exception to be thrown. And this scenario, I want to reiterate something that I said before, and that, you know, if a condition occurs in your software, in your application software that you want to deem as Like this is a problem that you want to handle in a unique way, and it's not going to happen all the time. It happens exceptionally, and you just don't want to handle it using if statements and loops. In other words, you want to kind of raise the flag and say, hey, this is a problem and someone needs to handle this. If this were to happen and someone were to try to assign a final grade greater than 100, like let's throw an alert in our software, and if you don't handle that alert, it's going to actually crash the software. It's not going to allow it to happen. And so, the more I think about this, it's like, hey, these conditions, not only should they happen like not frequently, but it should, be a semi-severe consequence if you don't fix this in your software. And so this constructor can potentially throw this exception if the data is good. Now the letter grade equals letter grade, that is not actually what we need here. We're just going to average these two things together, and then based on that average, we assign the letter grade. So we'll say we're going to just say that they're evenly weighted, divide by 2, and then if average grade is greater than a 90, letter grade is A, letter grade is A, else if average grade is greater than 80. This is something that I'm kind of coding it a little bit with a different style here. And what you might notice is I don't have my curly braces. And the reason that works is that if you only have one statement, and each one of these if statements only have one statement, what is a statement? Well, a statement ends with a semicolon. So if you only have one C# statement inside of a block of code, then the curlies are optional. If you have multiple statements, then the curlies are mandatory. So this kind of allows us to condense this down and not have some huge block of code to assign letter grade. Of course, you could condense it more, but this is a good step in the right direction. So now our constructor throws an exception, assigns some properties, and gives us a letter grade. Create a program named this that attempts to create several valid and invalid report card objects. So back in our form, we can demo this. Now we're going to be able to create some report cards here, and we'll give this now we actually don't need to take in the letter grade. Obviously the letter grade will be calculated, so let me take that letter grade out of the constructor. And then we can use these properties instead of, oh no, that works. That actually doesn't need to change. I just don't need to pass in the letter grade because the letter grade is calculated. Bless you. So back to here. Now that this line right here is a constructor call. You're adding a new object, a new report card to your list of report cards. All of those are good. And so keep in mind, but if I add something like this, if I add this report card and I throw for her midterm grade, throw an exception, this should crash the program in its current state because we didn't handle that, right? The exception was thrown, not handled. And this is in student grade demo. And when I click the button, we get an argument exception message. It doesn't fall within a given range, and you can kind of see here over on line 20 of report card, we throw the exception right here on line 20. And so how do you handle that? Well, you handle it with the try catch. All of these could be added to a try block. And so you might have maybe an output label and an error label. So this will be my label result. And you'll notice I'll add 3. Lady Gaga was at the Super Bowl. Who was the last Super Bowl performer?
Was it Rihanna?
Well,
I stopped after we got
one pop star versus another. My bad. It was Rihanna. That shows you how connected I am with pop culture.
It was like a whole thing everybody was talking about.
I know. She had the baby bump, right? Was she pregnant? Was she not? I know. I saw it. I just don't know my pop music stars. Let's add Shakira as well. Man, I'm getting old. Okay. I'm trying to do this here, and it's only going to add 3 of these, right? Only 3 of these will be added to the list. One of them will not, but it won't crash my program. Now, what I'm going to do after that is I will loop through my cards for each report card in cards. Label result.text plus equals card. We'll do a little string here. Card dot student name. So let's say Billy Joel's. Forget what the second one was. Let's see if I can get. Let me just look. Midterm and then final. So we'll say midterm grade was a here. And final rate was a resulting in a card dot Letter grade. So we tried to put in 4 cards. We're not letting it crash anymore. We got this catch block in. We're not doing anything here. But we should see that now that there are 3 cards, now it's still crashing. Okay, yeah. So it does, in fact, the way this works, and this is kind of good to see, right? It adds Billy Joel, and then it goes to add Lady Gaga. It runs the catch, and then it actually does not go back into the try block, right? So just for the sake of getting the other cards added, now we can get all the cards added. So if you really wanted to, you could put each one of these calls into a try catch. Here you could do an error message, have a different label. Label error message. And you could see that we're getting both results now, right? Point is, it's not crashing the program when this bad card was added. Display all the data if the instantiation is successful. Of course, you could just get input from a user and whatnot, but that's the gist of that one. Let's do one more, and then we'll open it up for some labs. Create a program named Book Exception Demo. Create a book class, book exception class, that is instantiated when a book's price exceeds 10 cents per page, and whose constructor requires 3 arguments: title, price, and number of pages. So we need a book class. It doesn't really talk about a book class, but there is a book, and it's going to have title, price, and number of pages. Create an error message is passed to the exception class, so we're going to inherit from exception, meaning it doesn't meet the price to page ratio. For example, an error message might be for Goodnight Moon, an invalid ratio is price is $12.99 for 25 pages. Okay, so we're going to make a book exception demo. Close all tabs, right click, add, making our own exception class this time. There's a book class. And a book has title, price, and number of pages. So there's our auto-implemented properties. Here's our constructor. It says it's going to take in all 3. We need a book exception class. So let's add a class called book exception. Now, to make an exception class, you have to inherit, and there's a couple of classes you could inherit from, but it pretty much tells us to inherit from exception. It says pass to the exception class constructor. The way that we do that is with the keyword base. So our exception message is going to be passed up to base whenever we create a book exception. Pass that up to the exception parent. And again, price exceeds 10 cents per page. So now we've got a number of pages and we've got a price. If num pages you gotta take the price divided by the number of pages, right? Price divided by num pages to get 100. If price divided by num pages is greater than 0.1, let me just do this on a separate line. Decimal cost per page equals price divided by num pages. And now I could say if cost per page greater than 0.1 M, throw new book exception. And it tells us price is this for this many pages. Price is this for this many pages. So we pass the exception message right here. And that should do the trick. Make sure I'm not missing anything. So create book. And Good Night Moon. $12.99 was there, and 25 pages. $12.99 M for decimal. So again, just double checking their math. $12.99 divided by 25 pages is 52 cents per page. Let's wrap that into try catch. Catch a book exception EX. Put a label result in here. Book exception demo. So there's our exception message, which is the exact thing that they told us to put. Oh, it also wants us to put for Good Night Moon ratio is invalid. So we would go back here and say for title dot dot dot. There we go. Okay, just wanted to go through a couple examples. Stop that recording here.